this is Kristen Mullen. I'm a master's level therapist in the North Valley in Phoenix, Arizona, and the lovely ladies at the Childhood Collective asked me to answer a couple questions about counseling for their community. And one of those questions was, is it covered by insurance and how much does it cost? Well, yes, the short answer is yes, counseling is covered by many insurance programs, and there's also that EAP program, the Employee Assistance Program, that typically includes 6 to 8 sessions for the people who are in their program. Now, counselors typically fall into two categories. There's counselors that are contracted with insurance companies and counselors that are not contracted with insurance companies. And there's some important aspects about this that you should know before you make your final decisions. When it comes to paying for counseling, there are a lot of options, which is wonderful and also very confusing. So let's start out with the easiest route. The EAP was created, the Employee Assistance Program was created to make counseling more accessible, and it's sort of separate from your insurance. Typically, it's free. With that program, I know from my colleagues that some of the complaints about that EAP program is that there's a limit to the amount of sessions that the program will pay for, and not all concerns that come in can be managed within 6 sessions. Sometimes some counseling situations take a lot longer than that, and so that can be a real bummer when you're just getting going and then you have to switch counselors. But if it's between a counselor and no counselor, go for it by all means. Now let's say you have insurance and it does cover counseling. Typically you're just going to pay a copay, probably the same type of copay that you pay, $30 or whatever, that you pay at your doctor's office. Your counselor will run that payment. Now, there's only going to be so many counselors that are contracted with insurance. And typically, if you have a unique situation, if you're very niche in your situation, you specifically need trauma therapy or you specifically need guidance with ADHD, those counselors that are experts in those fields, that have niched themselves down into an arena like that, they may or may not. It's a gamble. They may or may not take the insurance. So don't limit your search with just the counselors that happen to take your insurance. There's a couple other things that when you use insurance for counseling that a lot of people don't realize. Now, insurance companies will not reimburse their counselors unless there's a documented diagnosis. There has to be some reason why this person has to go to counseling and they're paying for it, right? Which I suppose makes sense, but to be honest with you, it's okay to go to counseling even if you don't have all the symptoms of a diagnosis. If you just need some guidance from somebody, that's okay too. And the tricky part about that is that you now have a medical document that has this diagnosis on it, and you can ask your counselor what they documented as your diagnosis. But for some people, moving on, when their records are requested later on for life insurance or for going into the military, sometimes that can kind of shoot them in the foot. So some of those shortcomings about using insurance for counseling, it's just the reality. It doesn't mean that you should not use your insurance. By all means, there's wonderful therapists out there ready to help you that are covered by your insurance. That's why they take insurance, because it is a gigantic pain to take insurance. So for that reason though, and those limitations, there's many counselors that do not contract with insurance at all. And in those cases, that's what's considered private pay. And if you happen to find a therapist that seems like they're a really good fit for you and they're private pay, and if their rates are a little too high, it's okay to ask if they have a sliding scale or if they have any kind of reduced fee program. Many counselors do. So that brings us to the last part of this question, which was, what does it cost? Well, if you're not using insurance is probably going to be your copay. If you're not using insurance, however, I know that in the North Valley, I can't speak for other states and other towns, and I know that in New York it can be $200 and $300 an hour in California, but I can tell you in Phoenix, it's typically around 120, 140 an hour, and there are some practices that have therapists in it that they charge $80 an hour because that's their business model, is to be more affordable. And then there's other practices where, because it's an expertise or whatever, they're charging, you know, $180 to $200 per hour, like hypnotherapy or something like that. So you just kind of have to shop, and you know, it doesn't hurt to ask if there's a lower fee.